Hello, everyone. Happy New Year. Happy 2024 or 2025, I should say. Welcome to 2025, everyone. Thank you for joining me on the live stream today. It's fantastic to hear from everyone in this new year. All very exciting, I must say. And let's start the year as you mean to go on. Massive thank you already. Big shout out to Surfactant, who in typical supportive format has dropped a $10 donation saying Happy New Year, King. May 2025 be even brighter for you than 2024. I hope so. In terms of goals for the channel, last year I did set the goal, I believe, to hit 100k subscribers. Now, in not hitting that number, I've hit 80k. In not hitting that number, I'm not too bothered because I feel like I came up against probably a little bit more resistance in terms of social algorithms this year than I had anticipated I would have come up against. And I think in spite of that we've done really well as a community. We've seen the channel grow. And also I think our influence, more importantly, has been substantial. Our influence has been substantial. So that's, that's one of the main things. I need to address also obviously people are leaving their messages of condolence for the alleged passing of Mr. Imhotep. The only reason I haven't followed suit yet is because I'm not satisfied that it's been confirmed yet. So this is the reason why I'm just holding back at the moment, because so far all of the sources that are alleging to know him, I've actually checked out a lot of them and they're all new accounts, and I'm always really suspicious and really fishy when people post from new accounts that aren't real. I haven't seen a genuine account on Facebook or anywhere that has like genuine friends, where you can see a photo and someone says, look, this is me, I am XYZ, and you can definitely verify it's them. They've got an account that's been knocking around for 15-20 years like most people do on Facebook, who has come out and who has confirmed it. So I don't want to make anyone overly optimistic that it's not the case, but I'm still not satisfied that it is the case. So I'm not going to act on that until I'm satisfied that someone's given me what I could trust as a, verifiable source that's been the case. So far, there's been nothing officially posted on any of his socials by his account, which I could understand might be difficult if no one had access to anything that he had access to. So I appreciate that. But also, failing that, I'd like to see some confirmation from someone who's alleged to be a family member who has a real, when I say a real, I mean an account that hasn't just been set up to say, I want to give you this news, a real account. And that's just my take on this. I'm gonna leave it there. Happy New Year, everyone. I know it's a very glum new year if that is the case, but I have to get that confirmed. Okay, so that's it really, So yeah, that's all I'm gonna say on that point. So I'm gonna move on and leave the door of optimism open. London MMC, can I say a massive thank you to you for your $5 donation? You said, Happy New Year, everyone. Let's make even more noise in 2025. And I feel the same about Mr. Imhotep King, especially working in the medical field. Yeah. So yeah, similar sentiments to me. So yeah, let's hold out, have a bit of optimism, and you never know. But at the moment, I'm not satisfied in that area. Yeah, so we'll leave it at that. But yeah, thank you guys. I actually remember when I was a few months into this channel, people were leaving RIPs and condolences for me because some probably crazed Eurocentric had decided to spread a rumor about my, passing. This is the kind of things that, so either which way, I'm not saying it is or it isn't. I can't say any of that. I'm just going to leave it at that. So yeah, Happy New Year, everyone. We are in 2025 and I thought, let's do a little bit of a digest of 2024 because it was a very exciting year. Looking back at some of the content that was made Yeah, it was an exciting year. A lot went down. It got wild at points, didn't it? I have to say, 2020 year was a lot. I'm telling you right now, as a community, just looking back, we really made an impact, man. I'm telling you, man. We really made an impact. I feel like there was a real transition. Maybe this is me looking at things through rose tinted glasses, but do feel like there was a real transition from the start of 2024 to where we are now, start of 2025, in terms of the overall perception of a lot of the histories and the perspectives of history that we present, which are, I mean, we tackle some Black Egypt itself as a difficult topic because of the mind control the whole world has been under for the past, 2 centuries. But then to compound that, we've touched on Black Europe, Black nobility, and amongst other things, we touched on Timbuktu, we touched on the Moors. These are all, I mean, Black history is controversial because it's the most appropriated history or historical area there is. And I feel we've dived into each of these areas, and not only have we held our own, we've actually shown them. We've shown, when I say them, we've shown people who didn't know that actually, no, the information we're presenting is very credible. And by the way, this is not me sitting down giving credit to myself or any of the other excellent creators that are out there. And by the way, there are some very excellent creators out there who I am very proud to hold the mantle with and hold the fort. I'm very, there's a lot of really good creators out there, but we all lean on the works of the very capable and very great Black scholars that we have seen historically. We lean on them, and all we do is bring to surface some of their excellent research that they've done already. So here's to 2025, just building on those successes, and really this opening the eyes of the global melanated community to the richness of our past and the possibilities of our future. So there you go. There's a little bit of a monologue to start 2025 with. So what do I want to do today? All I wanted to do really is I'm going to keep it relatively light, and I wanted to go through this is going to be a focus on my reconstructions. I know I've just said we touched on different areas, and I might do a 2024 in review looking at my videos and my research, because actually on that note, I feel like 2024 has definitely been a much more research intensive year than 2023 was. For instance, 2024 for me personally has been all about research. And if you look at the content on my channel, a lot of it is documentaries and, dives or deep dives into certain areas of research, new areas of research sometimes that haven't been touched before, very challenging areas of research. And I didn't get as much time to just really lean into reconstructions. 2023, I did so much more, just kind of it was just reconstructions really from the start of the year to the end of the year, mixed in with a bit of, Kemetic history. But 2024 was really research intensive. But what was great is towards the tail end of last year now, 2024, I did manage to get quite a few new reconstructions done. And also I was always working in the back on just enhancing and honing in my skills as a reconstruction artist. And I feel like I've gotten a lot better. I feel like I've really improved. And I feel like my reconstructions are benefiting from an added touch of realism that I'm really enjoying being able to share. And also my I did a bit of a dive into the Old Kingdom, which I loved because I wasn't expecting to get out of the Old Kingdom what I got out of the Old Kingdom. But enough of the spoilers. We're gonna just look at some of these. But some of the reconstructions that I've produced have shocked me in terms of the outcomes, because I wasn't expecting them to look the way they looked when I put all the features together. So because a lot of people think, let me just say this really quick before I start sharing the screen and showing you my reconstructions. A lot of people think that when I go into reconstruction, I go in there with a preconceived notion of what I'm going to be confronted with when I kind of like produce whatever comes out the other end. Most people think I have an obsession with making people look West African, whatever that means. Neither of these are true. I literally go in and I try my best to literally match the features, and sometimes go in there and I'm thinking this is going to look like this, and by the time I'm finished moving the features and making it match the statue exactly, I'm like, whoa, that's quite different to what I was expecting. I wasn't expecting it to look this, tropical, or I wasn't expecting it to look this nihilotic, or I wasn't expecting it to look this, horn or whatever. I can't, sometimes I'm very shocked with the outcome, but I obviously just have to accept the outcome is what the outcome is. That's what it is. That's how it works. And I just accept that that's what those features look like when they're put together to look like a human being. And I'm always happy, obviously, with the way that it comes out, and I'm always happy to share it. So yeah, I was shocked at some points. So let's have a bit of a digest, focusing on my 2024 reconstructions. I'm assuming most of you have seen most of them, but some of them might be new to some of you. So it'll be nice to kind of show you what my inspirations were for each one without really focusing too deep on any one in particular, because we're going to have a lot to get through, and just having fun with it. And if you want to ask some questions as I'm kind of diving in, feel free to. Now's the time to ask your questions, maybe to challenge my reconstructions, maybe to, I don't know, you let me know. But it's the door and the floor is open to you guys. If you want to join the chat, actually, let me pin that. Let me send you a link for the chat as well. So if you want to join the chat, I am very happy for you to jump in. Let me just no, I can't put myself in timeout. Let me try here. Pin message. There you go. So it's pinned to the top. Yeah. I mean, Surfactant has just mentioned the only other person who's on a par with your level of reconstruction is that lady whose work you show. So that's Nydia, I think you're talking about. Yeah, or Dina, she's also known as. She's on Instagram and YouTube. She really did up my. I'm really glad I met her because it upped the standard of my reconstructions. I just noted the way that she did certain things and paid attention to certain details that I was previously perhaps allowing myself to miss, and really kind of like focusing in on even really small things. So this is where I'm gonna bring you into my little nerdy world. I realized I was not paying attention to little things like buccal fat, the fat around the eyes, the total. I used to focus really a lot on nose, lips, eyes, getting those to match, and shape of the face, but without the contours of the face. So I think meeting Dina's and seeing her work, reconstruction work, really got me to focus in on paying attention to really small aspects that I would normally just, I wouldn't say I would ignore, but I would allow them to not match exactly. But really pushing myself to match those things exactly has completely changed the way that I do reconstructions now, and actually even changed a lot of my perception on who the ancient Egyptians were, because I was like, I was doing it wrong, and that's why I was kind of getting it wrong for some of my reconstructions. So yeah, I'm really happy to have met her. This is a really good question. So someone's asked here, how do you get the correct skin tones? It's very difficult to answer my question. Some people are easier than others. So for instance, Tutankhamun, who I've done 100 times now, in my personal view, particularly if you've seen my video about Tutankhamun, I believe he's quite explicit about what his complexion is in the various artworks that he's got. We have really good preserved color for Tutankhamun. So nailing his complexion was relatively not that difficult to do. I'd say the same with Akhenaten. We've got enough artworks with preserved skin tone for me to confidently say that's his complexion. One that's on the screen is Mentuhotep II, who we're going to come to. I believe we've got a very good representation of him that enables us to approximate his complexion. Queen T as well, her bust is, in my view, not questionable. It's one of the best preserved busts there is, and it's very clear about what her complexion is. And then others you kind of approximate based on some of the statues. So Hatshepsut, she's got at least 2 or 3 depictions that show her in that reddish brown tone, so I leaned upon that. And then others really are a guess, and they're a guess based on after kind of like during / after I've kind of constructed the face. I look at where that face sits in terms of tonality, and sometimes I'll just kind of like adjust up and down until I find the one that says this looks the most natural. So that's not super scientific, but I'm happy with that approach. So yeah, sometimes I have explicit. So I mean, just to lean on that as well. So Mentuhotep II, who's pictured here, I've got 2 reconstructions of him, because a lot of people were like, he's supposed to be jet black. I was like, well, I've got one that's very dark that you can see here, but I also have one that you're going to see that's very reddish brown, because he also has a bust that is that kind of reddish brown tone. And I felt that it's fair to represent both complexions rather than just to represent the one. So as much as I can, I lean on the anthropology and the artwork to kind of say, well, this looks like it's the fairest approach to skin tone. And where I don't get it, I'll kind of lean somewhat on my intuition. An example of someone who I didn't get the skin tone for is Sinisret III, who we're going to look at in a moment. There's no references to his skin tone, but I felt like his phenotype, the structure of his face, is something I had seen in certain populations, and it approximated right to kind of like sit it within that Great Lakes region, actually, which is where I get most of my reference from, to be honest with you. But there you go. But yeah, there you go. So that's just to answer that question. That's a good question. Thank you for asking that. And without further ado, let's get started now. So I'm going to go into my folder. I'm going to start at the earliest point in 2024, and we're just going to work forward. We're just going to do that, man, and see how that goes. I hope this works. Okay, let me sort these by date. Sort by date. Boom, boom. Excellent. Okay, so I'm going to scroll to the bottom. Okay, so here we go. You know what? I've got a certain folder open. It's my collage folder. So I think I'm just going to end up just scrolling through this. This will be enough of a interesting thing for us to do. So let's wait for that to load. Oh no, don't want. Okay, so let's open up photos. Yep, boom. Okay, should pop up on the screen. There we are. All right, so I know this isn't a reconstruction, but I don't know who remembers when I posted this meme. Just put a 1 in the chat if you saw this when I posted this in the community. This is a favorite of mine. Actually, after I posted this, a lot of other channels picked this up. But this was something that I had picked up from, I can't remember exactly where. I think it was kind of like a discussion from back in the day, maybe like on Egypt Search, like a long time ago. And I was like, oh no, I absolutely need to do this as a bit of a meme, because this was so important to debunk. I actually got into a discussion / debate the other day with someone who promotes Black Egypt, but he was trying to tell me how the Egyptians all had bald heads and they all wore wigs. I was like, dude, that's Eurocentric nonsense. It's absolutely not supported. And what evidence do we have? Well, the best evidence we have is that we have steles of them actually in hairdressers getting their hair twisted. Yeah. So, you know, there's no better evidence than that. That's kind of like end of discussion, end of argument. don't really want to hear anything else from the Eurocentrists. Yeah, this is a black man with African vertical stand-up hair getting their hair placed into twists. Yeah, that's it. I'm not going to have a debate with you or discussion with you about, whether or not their hair was natural or not, because it's not even a discussion. It's done. And where's my arrows gone? This is annoying. I want to scroll left and right. Wait. That's really annoying. So anyway, that was the first one, and then this is the second one. I don't know why it's not letting me scroll left and right. My PC acting like it's about to die. Behave yourself. Oh man, my PC's being so annoying right now. Is this one going to show me arrows? So normally I get the left and right scrolly arrows. If I don't get, in fact, let me see if I can scroll through using my keyboard. Oh, if I don't get the left and right scrolly arrows, today is going to be a very long day. I don't know why it's being so rubbish. God's sake, man, come on. All right, let me close it all down. Maybe it's because this is open like that. I'm actually getting really irritated here. Sorry, guys. I know this is very boring for you. I'm going to try again because I will not be able to live without my scrolly arrows today. So I'm going to try again. Open with photos. Yes. See that? This is what I was looking for. This little arrow here. Why would it just decide to not show and then show? I'm so done. So anyway, this is what I was showing people, and then this is the real life example of this. I mean, there's not really a debate to be had here, is there? So this is at that point where we just decide we're not going to discuss this with any Eurocentrists about the use of wigs, because there it is. It's the end, isn't it? Can I give a big shout out to Pursuit of Clarity? Happy New Year. I left a comment on 15 ancient Egyptian pharaohs brought to life about a possible item for your store. Your work is so fantastic. I want to share it with family. Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And thank you very much for your $20 donation. Email me. I'll put my email in the chat now. And don't worry, this is my one that I'm happy to share with everyone. show@gmail.com. Email me for kind of like stuff like that, because I read comments and sometimes I even the most well-meaning times I forget to respond. But if you email me, I'm much more likely to respond, and then we can carry on that discussion. And also I would like to do a complete revamp of the store. I've actually found a really good print fulfillment center for things like prints and canvases, because a lot of people want my reconstructions as posters. The only reason I haven't released them at this stage is because I haven't gotten to the stage where I'd be willing to sell it as a piece of art. That is going to take a bit of time on my part, so I have to dedicate the time to do that, to make it something that I think is worthwhile basically selling to people. So that's the only delay there, but they will be coming soon, I hope, if 2025 wills me at this point. Let's move on. And yes, Bantu beauties, they do still lie. Some people are still hooked on Egyptology. It's a powerful drug, a very powerful drug. Who remembers this post? This was me just doing a comparison between my my Amenemhat III with former president of Nigeria, Yar'Adua. Slightly different nose, but very similar kind of phenotype and structure. I'm going to get back to doing some of those. I like those real life comparisons. Haven't done those for a while, so I'm sure I will now that I've got a new cluster of reconstructions to show you guys. And this was just another view of the same thing. I really love this, actually. What an amazing statue. This statue, I think, must have been built from a plaster cast, because it's just so realistic. And doesn't it just argue, once again, you guys know I'm obsessed with the fact that they continually try to push this idea that ancient Egyptian artwork is not realistic. Well, this was made from well, this was made from one that was made from a plaster cast of his actual face. How you can't get more realistic than actually putting plaster on someone's face. Okay, at what point do Egyptologists draw the line and say no, actually no, some of the artwork was realistic, we have to accept that this is a real man? And if you look at this face and see anything other than an African, then yeah, good luck to you, yeah, so let's keep going. So this was my comparison to my Nama reconstruction and UFC fighter, or former UFC fighter, Yoel Romero, which was an unexpected comparison, but it is pretty strong. I mean, when you see them side by side there, that's a pretty strong one. He's a Afro-Cuban. Obviously, I should just say Cuban, you know, but there you go. Anyway, I thought that was quite a strong comparison there. And then we have comparison between my Akhenaten. My Akhenaten's changed slightly now. It doesn't look exactly like this anymore, but I had to admit that it has a very strong resemblance to Arsenio Hall. So I thought that was quite an interesting comparison there. Particularly Arsenio Hall has always had that really strong chin, strong kind of like quite pointy looking chin, like Akhenaten's got that strong chin feature. I mean, it's pretty spot on. I'm not gonna lie. Someone from the community pointed that out to me. I didn't even do that myself. And this was a comparison between some people, some Maasai. I think these are Samburu, some Maasai from the Samburu tribe, and just a comparison with my previous Akhenaten once again looking at some of the expression of some of those features, which I think was a really good comparison in terms of how they are manifested. This was just a thumbnail. If I can skip over these, that was a thumbnail for my Fayum video. I can't remember what the meme was here, but I did just want to show, yeah, I think this is Queen Kawit. So this is one of the wives of, correct me if I'm wrong, Mentuhotep II, I believe. I think so. I think this is one of the wives of Mentuhotep II, Queen Kawit. We have Kawit, Kemsit, and Ashait. And you can see these all wonderful African queens. I think the reason I posted this was because this was the Eurocentric interpretation, yeah, of this image. So here you have the queens here, yeah, clearly African queens here getting their hair twisted on their head, not a wig, yeah, their actual natural hair twisted like Africans do to this very day. And then the Eurocentrists produce this as their facsimile reproduction. So this is supposed to be this, yeah. Now, what's really hilarious about this is, have you ever seen red hair in Kemet? Not that this was a representation of hair anyway, but have you ever seen red hair in Kemet? These people are relentlessly delusional. And then this illustration, which actually had a black woman doing a white woman's hair, which is incredibly ironic. Yes, this is a sheesh. All right, let's keep it moving. Let's go into some reconstructions. This was I created this for, actually, who remembers what this is all about? So this was the Fayum portraits. Okay, so this was the Fayum portrait that was found, and this was the skull. Now, the big controversy about this one that's on the screen at the moment is that the Fayum portrait that was found was here, and this was clearly a depiction of someone who was around 9 or 10 years old. Now, this was the skull, or at least the body of the child that was inside, and the body of the child, they said, was no older than 4 years old. So obviously that first of all raised the question as to why there would be an older child on the coffin of a child. It would work the other way around, i.e. if the child was 10 and the portrait was 4, you could explain that, because you could say, well, the portrait was done when the child was young, they weren't expecting them to die, and therefore they did a portrait and they put it on. But if the child inside is 4 years old and the portrait's a 10-year-old, then fraud is going to start has to be one of the first things that comes to mind. This seems very fraudulent. And by the way, if you didn't know, I believe the Fayum portraits are almost, not entirely, but almost entirely fraudulent. And it was a way to money spin. Basically, there's a way for Petrie and the guy who found them, I can't remember his name. Petrie did the second lot. The guy who found the first lot was called, I can't remember, but he was an art curator. And this was a way for him to basically sell a bunch of useless cadavers, because the Fayum mummies aren't mummies at all. They're just dead bodies in coffins, basically. So they have no value until you slap a portrait on them and then make out they have some connection to, you know, Greco-Roman Egypt. That's when you get a bit of money for them. But anyway, so you have this portrait which doesn't match the age of the contents, but not only does it not match the age, when you look at the skull itself, you look at the features of the skull, it looks to be an African child. It doesn't look to be a European child. Just a quick rule about noses, just to show you how ridiculous this reconstruction is. So they created this reconstruction in the attempt to recreate this. Okay, so this is the reconstruction they came up with. One of the biggest problems you have with this reconstruction is that there's a rule when it comes to, and I might not have gone through this. I'm going to go through this with you guys now really quickly. There's a rule that goes with reconstruction, and that is the nasal cavity represents 60% of the width of the nose. That's regardless of the age of the subject. Okay, so this is one of the ways that we can do reconstruction. This is something I got from Carolyn Wilkinson. This is not something that's just plucked out of the sky. This is a fact. Okay, so whenever we have a nasal cavity, we know that the nose will come out basically 20% on each side, roughly. Okay, so we're looking at a nose that is at least that wide for this subject. Now, if I just scroll along and show you why I believe it to be an African child, you can see for a child whose face is like this, this fits. Okay, that nasal cavity fits. However, when you scroll up and have a look at their reconstruction, the nose is actually narrower than the nasal cavity, which is just something that doesn't occur. So this is fraudulent. This reconstruction is fraudulent. And this, I mean, the nose is even wider than the portrait. The mummy portrait nose is an absolute mismatch for this skull. There's no way one could be the other. So this is one of the many reasons why, and I know I've been promising that documentary forever. I will do my documentary eventually on the Fayum portraits and why I believe it's an entire hoax. But anyway, let's move on. Been on that for too long. This is another Fayum portrait that didn't match the contents. This is a reconstruction done by Carolyn Wilkinson. Notice the nose. Okay, and bear in mind that rule I just told you. This would have been why she approximated the nose to be this wide, and she couldn't. She had to ignore the Fayum portrait in this regard, because the nose, the nasal cavity she would have been faced with would not support her doing the nose like this. So even Carolyn Wilkinson, who has all of her flaws, has a degree of integrity to say that this doesn't match. Now, anyone can see even the way they've done, like the rest of this reconstruction is a cope. This is just an entirely black man without any way, shape or form. And so is the subject above. She said in the report that she thought these were okay-ish. Well, this one was an okay-ish match. These were both just wildly incorrect in comparison to the portraits. So we know there's a lot of, fraud going on there. Let's move on. Okay, what was this about? This is probably about black nobility in Europe. I'm not going to go into that right now because this is just a bunch of AI images, so we're not really learning that much from that. That's probably just to promote something. And let's go on to some reconstructions now. So one of my early reconstructions from last year. Do we all know who this is, everyone? If you don't know, I mentioned him earlier. Okay, so this is Mentuhotep II. And I said that I did 2 reconstructions of him. Well, not 2 reconstructions, 2 versions of the same reconstruction, so to speak. One that was very dark and one that was more of a reddish brown tone. The reddish brown tone on this matches 2 reconstructions, sorry, 2 artworks that he has. He has one stele where he's in the reddish brown tone, and he has one bust when he's also in a reddish brown tone. So because of both of those, I did want to be integral with my approach and not just do the one reconstruction where he was super dark skin to match his other more than life-size statue. I wanted to kind of give both of his representations credence when I recreated him. To me, it doesn't, you know, to me personally, doesn't really make a difference to the fact that this is a clearly, clearly African man. And one of the things I think I mentioned was that it's not entirely unusual or impossible for an African person to actually go from the extremes of being relatively medium toned like he is here to relatively or very dark skinned if exposed to the right conditions. That's how melanin works. Sometimes it can just kick in and you can get super blacked out. So it could be that. I'm not going to speculate too much, but that's the reason why I've got both representations of Mentuhotep II. Okay, you can see his features here. I love how expressive his lips, and I'm actually really happy that his lips survived Eurocentrism. This is a rare treat for us to see lips like this, and the fullness of his face, the width of his face, the prognathism. I mean, maybe there was an integral Egyptologist who came over and found his head on the floor, and popped it on the statue or something like that. I don't know, but we don't normally have specimens like this that they allow to survive. So it's great to have this bust of Mentuhotep II. So these are the two that I was talking about. So we've got the stele here and we've got the bust here. I actually saw this bust. This bust was in the Vatican Museum. Actually, no, this one's slightly different. There was another bust of Mentuhotep II in the Vatican Museum that's similar to this, but looking at it now, it might not be the same one. In fact, pause that. Hold that thought. Sorry, I'm going to just double check. I want to see if it is a match. Was I looking at the same statue there? Here it is. No, it's different. Yeah, it's different. So I assumed I was looking at the same bust, and no, it's different. It's definitely different. It's either different or it's been very badly vandalized. 1 second, no, it's certainly different. It's certainly different. Okay, cool. So yeah, no, I haven't seen this one. I thought I'd seen it in life, but I hadn't seen this one. So yeah, that's the reason why I showed the different complexions. By the way, this one has been photoshopped to look this orange, by the way, if you're worried about why does this one look so orange, this is not the original color. This is people tampering with tones, which you get so much with Egyptian artwork. By the way, if you didn't know, people are always super pushing up the saturation and then pushing up the brightness. You see it done with mummies, you see it done with art, and then when you see it in real life, you're like, this looks nothing like what I saw online. And that's because people are very uncomfortable with the overt Africanity of the appearance of many of the steles in ancient Egypt. That happens a lot. So this is the dark one, as I mentioned there. So I wanted to give both of the reconstructions representation. So you have a very dark one and a very light one. I've actually redone my Mentuhotep now. You're going to see towards the end of the stream. And this is just kind of like a spread of all of them together. Okay, there he is without hair. Okay, and there he is with the crown. So did a few different representations there. By the way, let me just, someone said, I thought the Fayum was Greek. Yes. Sorry, going back, I know I've already finished speaking about the Fayum, but just need to address this. I thought the Fayum was Greek. Yes, you are correct. The Fayum was Greek. The Fayum was Greek. That hasn't changed. I haven't changed my mind about the Fayum being in virtually an entirely Greek district and all of the Fayum cadavers being Greek, because they all have Greek or Roman. They all have Greco-Roman names. Okay, so it certainly was a Greco-Roman district. So now you have to ask yourself why. That's probably the question. Why I thought it was Greek. Why are there black people inside the coffins? I don't know. They're still Greeks. They're still Greco-Romans. Yeah, that's a good question. And it's a question you should be asking. It's the right question, so to speak. Okay. It's the right question. That reminds me of iRobot. That is the right question. So there's another couple of representations of Mentuhotep. You can see I like to play around with layouts before I actually publish stuff. So let's move on. Oh no, this is a good one because this one shows you him from different views. You get this wonderful profile view. I mean, anyone daring to claim that Mentuhotep II is not an African is like, really? Like, how do people look at stuff like this and then be like, oh, the ancient Egyptians weren't African? I'm like, dude, are we looking at the same face here? Are we looking at the same face here? Like, let this one go. How about that? You know, maybe make your base of an argument a different statue than Mentuhotep II, because that's if you just start your argument here, it's like you're not gonna win this argument, are you? No one on earth, no sane person on earth is going to argue that's anything but an African. So there's another bust. Okay. Same features on display, by the way. At least I feel like his busts are consistent enough to do a reconstruction, as you could see, and not have to change it drastically. Okay, you know where that's going. Who's seen my documentary about King Louis XIV and Anne Marie? No, Anna Marie. Oh God, I've forgotten. Anna Marie Teresa. No, Louisa. Teresa. Oh my goodness me, I've forgotten her name. That's how much separation I've had. The Moore daughter. There you go. Thank you, BG. You've seen King Louis XIV and his Moore daughter. All right. So if you've seen that, this was a part of my early research. So what you're seeing here is just me. This is a part of my comparison, you know, part of my method, part of my research, looking at the different scores of evidence and seeing if there's any continuity, things to discuss, and if there's any evidence to support them. Okay, so you'll know why these were put up, you know why these have been placed side by side, and you'll also know why I placed these side by side, and why I thought the armor thing was compelling. Actually, on that note, a couple of people did point out that the armor between this unnamed Moor and Louis XIV here is slightly different. Now, bear in mind, that's the only thing that's slightly like there. Even the ribbons and everything on the neck, everything is identical here. This is very peculiar. Then he has this kind of like pink ribbon going along the outside, etc., etc. I did note there was a slight difference with the armor around the shoulder, okay, and maybe just touching on that little brooch there. And when I saw the difference, I interpreted as kind of artistic differentiation. I just thought I could see, you know, two artists essentially approaching that armor in these slightly different ways. Now that could be a reach. I'm not going to say it's the case. That could be a reach, but I think there's just too much confluence. And I haven't done a zoom out here, but even the elbow or the arm part here, the inner arm part over here, is identical. I wish I'd had a zoom out of it. You'll see it. They're just so close that you have to believe at the very least they've come out of the same armory, and that would be almost unheard of, you know. Can someone block Hopeful Soul, please, because they're getting on my damn nerves. Yeah, thank you. And then let's move on. So this is one that I haven't shown you, but I might do in the future video. I'm just going to kind of gloss past now. This is what, then I started doing some work on Thuya. Now, this is one of my very, very early kind of like reconstructions of Thuya. Now, Thuya, actually, between you and me, was quite difficult to do. because her representations are quite different from one another. So, and to be honest with you, I think part of that is me knowing what the artistic trends are in Kemet, and perhaps not really, because I was starved for artwork for Thuya. I was working with what I had. Now, the rule essentially is that gilded masks, okay, sorry, when I say gilded masks, I'm talking about the gilded coffin lids, okay, which normally work in a kind of Russian doll way, in that you'll have an inner coffin and an outer coffin, or if it's someone who's of high nobility or royal, sometimes you have 3 layers of coffins, or even 4, okay, but they normally work in that kind of Russian doll way. And this one is the mask. Sometimes the mask is smaller, but the mask sometimes has to fit over another mask. And so for that reason, by the time you're a couple layers out, or even just 1 layer out from the top, the features become, it doesn't look like the person. In fact, I found it's very rare, very, very rare, that you find a coffin lid that resembles the person inside. I think the only one that does, and it would make sense because he was a pharaoh, was King Tutankhamun. He's got his obviously his golden mask, which looks just like all of his statues and just like all of his depictions of him, but he's the only one. The all the rest of them, these coffin lids, aren't really the most reliable source, so I'm not sure how much focus I should have given to the gilded mask. Okay, so what you'll find is that although these look kind of similar expression wise, you do notice there's a difference in terms of the length of the nose. The reason why that difference is because I'm trying to, as you know, when I do my reconstructions, I'm trying to create one reconstruction that works for all of the artworks, as opposed to creating a reconstruction per artwork. So this is the reason why I essentially took the reconstruction that I had created, I aged it down because they looked younger here. I aged it down and then I gave it the kind of similar expression. And I had it was closer, but obviously it's not a total match, which is what I would want to get closer to. So that's the reason why it kind of looks the way it does. I'm okay with it, but I probably shouldn't have given that much time to the coffin lid. So with that being said, let me zoom ahead to the actual reconstruction where I got to. So I'm just going to skip ahead to my final reconstruction. In fact, let me show you something really quickly. I'm going to show you, I'm going to show you the difference between 2 things. So I started off, or at least this was close to my final reconstruction. You can see I took a lot of work trying to get the copy the face shape. The nose, I don't think I nailed. Okay, you can see it needs a little bit of work. And one of the details that I really felt only afterwards, that I missed was above the eyes here. So you can see above the eyes here, my reconstruction is quite sunken. But if you look at her bust over here, or at least her statuette, they've actually really made it clear, communicated quite clearly that she's quite puffy above the eyelids. So this is something that I knew I had to carry in. So I then modified it. Okay, I think the next one, it's going to crash on me. Oh. Where is it? Okay, so those are my early ones. I'm going to show you. So this was my modified one, where I kind of gave it more of the puffy eyelids. And you can see it does change the phenotype quite a lot. But I preferred it because it felt closer to what I was seeing on the statue. And the roundness of the face felt like it was more emphasized. Now, it does look a bit overly puffy. Like I said, I'm not like the Thuya. I feel like I'm going to revisit my Thuya reconstruction and see if I can get something that is more in rhyme and reason. This is an aged down version once again to kind of match this. So yeah, it got there. It made progress. But yeah, so there you go. That's kind of where I sat there with that one. Okay, So this was a post that I created for a short. Who remembers this short that I created regarding the these little gold things? Basically, they're plaits, or I should say kind of like locks. They're for locks, they're adornments for locks, which is something that Black people still use in their hair to this very day. And then when the Eurocentrists found it, they created this stupid beehive, which has got no representation in ancient Kemet. So people come in and they think, oh, look at this ancient Egyptian hairstyle. This is on display in the museum, by the way. The only thing Egyptian about this is the adornments, which have been created for locks. In fact, to be very clear, it's very normal in ancient Kemet to have the two sizes of locks on a single hairstyle. So what you'll find is you'll have the thicker locks at the top, and then towards the tip of the hair, they would have thinner locks. And this is why you would have thick and thin adornments. Okay, that's what they would have been used for, not to create this stupid, unrealistic. I mean, this is not even. Someone please help me out here. What the hell is this? Seriously, like, what is this? This is so stupid, it's unbelievable. But this is the kind of desperate stupidity this is the kind of desperate stupidity that Eurocentrists, must cook up, It's so pathetic. This hairstyle is not realistic, okay? That is not how you use lock and twist adornments. And that was the whole point of the short that I created there. Okay, these are African locks. This is how, to this very day, we adorn our twists. And you can see an ancient Kemetic hairstyle there with adornments on it. You can see this is always locks. Okay, always locks. Sister locks are actually very, very common hairstyle in ancient Kemet. These very thin locks. They have representation all over Kemet, or some kind of a twisted lock, like what you see here. This is what you see in ancient Kemet, nothing else. Okay, so this stupid hairstyle that they've created here it's not to be taken seriously, is it? It's absolutely ridiculous. But there you go. This is in a museum, guys. So when people act like, we're doing too much, oh, you guys need to stop complaining. Oh, why is it important? Why is it like this? Is in a museum. Okay, it's not. I wish this was just on a YouTube page. You know what I mean? One of those wild, racist, YouTube content creators, who try and make. But this is in a museum. No one's gone to the creators and said, "What the hell is this stupidity that you've created? This doesn't have any representation anywhere in ancient Egypt." What is this? This is crazy. Absolutely ridiculous. I was doing some comparisons to my reconstruction of Amos Nefertari, and I found this Nubian girl who has very similar facial composition, and I love the fact that we just have this continuity in Africa where our facial features can carry from the lightest skin to the darkest skinned person, and they're still shown in this, in the same way. It's really nice. So I thought that was a really nice comparison there, and I posted that one. There's some more comparison views. Okay, just those wonderful African features as they display themselves. Now this one, I feel like I'm gonna skip this one. This was just to show people. Basically, I created this post, and it's actually nice that I get an opportunity to explain this post, because I posted this, and I think that people didn't understand why I posted this. I posted this because historical descriptions of people used to be very literal. So if someone was describing how someone looked before the invention of race as we know it, the the description would be literal. So if someone was described as black, they'd say, yes, and we came across these people and they were black. Then they literally normally meant black or a tone very close to black. But black was not the only description that encompassed what we classify as modern black people. Modern black people are a massive range. This new kind of name that all these different variations of skin tones of African people have been given, black, isn't one that has, you know, as much historical significance as people would think. So black, you could just, you know, someone could be very, very dark and they'll be described, this person is black. Okay. But then these, well, a few of these people are what you describe as black, such as Anthony Joshua here. Okay. It's a fully black man. A Xhosa or Xhosa man here, a Brazilian man here. Okay. Well, two South Africans here. Yeah. But they wouldn't be described as black because they are not literally black. Okay. So a historian who comes across these people wouldn't have described them as black. They would describe them perhaps as tawny. Okay. So the tone is someone who is, you know, of a, you know, brown hue, but they're not necessarily black. Okay. They're not literally black, but we would classify them as part of the black race. Okay. So these are some more examples. And here I show you this example. This is quite important to show you this example as well. And actually, I'm going back to the first one really quickly, the black one. You'll notice there's a Sri Lankan man here. Okay. And you get a lot of Southern Indians who can be every bit as black, as blue black as a black person. Okay. Every bit as blue black as a black person. They would still be described as black. So you have to bear that in mind. Like, history is, before the invention of race, people didn't have racial categories. Okay. If they'll describe as someone, it was just a description of how they appeared. Okay. And someone could be incredibly dark and be described as a black and not be black, or someone could be light skinned and be described as tawny and be black in modern day. So it's very, very, well, not confusing. It actually, historically, it made a lot of sense. But now, because all of these people from various groups have just been chucked into a single ethnicity, you know, dustbin, for want of a better word, history becomes something that becomes very confusing for people to read and to understand. Okay. So brunette, okay, this is a term that's used quite often. You could be Indian and be of brunette skin. You could be Tuareg and be of brunette skin. You could be Yoruba or Congolese or American or Hausa and be of brunette skin. These people have all got that brown, you know, that strong brown tone with maybe a hint of red beneath it. Okay, this is a very common description. Okay, these are all modern, quote unquote, black people, but this would be a word that would have been used to describe them if you kind of came across them. This is a Twa man, by the way. Swarthy, that's the term we come across quite a lot. Okay, swarthy was basically the same as black, but more a browned black. Okay, so swarthy was browned black, a dark brown. Okay, I would probably be described as swarthy historically, and so he's a swarthy man. Okay, and all these people have essentially swarthy skin. Okay, copper, there's one that will ring a few people's ears, but yeah, copper was a tone or group used quite a lot. Okay, so we got, you know, Americans, Somali, these people have all got the same skin tone. Okay, but they're of different backgrounds, different histories. Okay, so this is quite important to kind of understand that. So that was just a post. Okay, moving on. Ramesses II. Ramesses II. This is King Mutesa II of Buganda. And those of you will know who saw my short. I think I did a short on it and I did a couple of posts on it as well. I feel he bore a very, very strong phenotypic resemblance to Ramesses. Okay, right across the board, a really, really strong resemblance to Ramesses. And what's interesting is it was a historian, Giuseppe Sergi, who put me onto that, because he believed his grandfather, King Mutesa I, looked like Ramesses. So when I started researching pictures of King Mutesa I, which are really hard to get, there's only one drawing available of him as far as I could see. I found pictures of his grandson Mutesa II, and yeah, the phenotypic consistency seemed to continue. Everything from the eyes, nose, everything just seemed really consistent. I thought, well, that is quite a thing. That is quite a thing. So yeah, and this was my reconstruction that I created before I saw Mutesa II's face, and I just thought it was quite striking that my reconstruction looked like they were related. Basically, when I looked at my reconstruction, I looked at Mutesa II, they looked like they were relations. So I thought that was quite a nice thing to see. And I just showed it from a few different views, so you could see how kind of consistent it is. And then that was my reconstruction of an elderly Ramesses. I think I've slightly improved my reconstruction of Ramesses now, by the way. I feel like I've slightly improved it. And I also, without going into this, I'm not going to go into a long diatribe about Ramesses' hair, but I am going to talk about it because it's something that comes up quite a lot. The first point I'd make is that all African people's hair, all black people's hair, when it turns completely grey, changes texture. So you see this hair texture here. This is typical of any black person who turns grey, because grey hair doesn't hold the same texture. It becomes very wiry. Okay, it's very rare, almost impossible, that you'll see tightly kinked grey hair. When it turns completely grey, that texture is very, very common. Okay, I have some grey hairs and they just come out straight. It's actually really irritating. But that's just the way it goes. You know, they grow with a different texture. So if you have someone who's 92 years old, which is the age Ramesses was when he passed away, and a full head of grey hair, it would have been very wavy. And then if you take that grey hair and you cover his face and you comb resin through his hair and you wrap his head like it's in a do-rag for 3,000 years with resin in his hair, what you're going to have is hair that has virtually got no texture or no kink when it's released, just like you'll get with one night of pomade and a do-rag on your hair. We'll multiply that by 3,000 years and you can imagine what the texture of your hair would be. Now, the difference is when they present you with these mummies, they always present you with these mummies and you think, oh, they just kind of like opened the lid and there it was. The mummy was just sitting there with its wavy hair. That's not what happened. When they find the mummies are like what you see in the cartoons. They're wrapped head to toe. But beneath the wrapping is a layer of resin, which they will then either peel or crack off. Yeah, so they've had to crack off this layer of resin that has sat on top of that mummy for 3,000 years. When they're peeling that resin out of the hair, it's very rare that they're going to be peeling that out of Afro hair, because Afro hair doesn't keep its texture when it's got resin applied to it and when it's been wrapped up for 3,000 years. And it shouldn't take people explaining this. This is just the process of mummification. It's very well known. Okay, they don't just open up a coffin box and the mummy's just sitting there. The mummy has to go through a process of preservation so that it looks the way it does, so that it doesn't decompose. And a part of that essentially is wrapping it in something that's close to a rubberized plastic. Okay, that's how it works. And that stuff is combed through the hair, and that stuff covers and coats every single part of the body before it's eventually peeled away. So you have to understand the kind of effect that that's going to have on native hair texture. Okay, this is why when they find mummies, they always find them with this hair. But even scientists who have seen the hair of mummies will tell you it's African hair. It's not that it's not African hair. It's African hair in one shape or another, because it doesn't just, if you notice that have you noticed how it sits against the scalp? It doesn't fall down. Okay, it doesn't fall down towards the thingy because it's not just kind of like loose thingy hair. This is the hair has been stiffened into that position after 3,000 years of mummification. It's not going to move anywhere. You're not just going to kind of like get a comb and wisp it about. That's not how it's going to work. Okay, sorry, someone says stop saying 3,000 years. You are correct. I should be saying, yeah, no, about 3,000 years. Why is that incorrect? Ramesses is about 1,100. Yeah, 3,000 years. Is that wrong? Correct me if I'm incorrect. I thought 3,000 years was fine. Obviously, I know I'm using a conventional timeline here, and you could be arguing a time dilation theory, which I'm not going to argue against. But for the sake of conventional discussion, we're going to say 3,000 years or so. Okay. Let's keep it moving. So this is an early reconstruction that I don't like. No, in fact, I don't even know why I'm showing you that, because I improved this so many times. This one just looks a bit weird. Didn't get the lips right or anything. So let's see where I ended up with this. So I think I'm going to scroll along a bit. So I started there, but then, yeah, this one looks a bit better. So by here, you can see I struggled with the lips. Actually, I don't mind bringing you guys into this process a bit with me, okay? So this is Amos the first, okay? And yes, I struggled a bit with the with the features on this one, okay? I struggled with the eyes. The eyes definitely felt really hard to reproduce, to the point they are consistent. The thing about his eyes, they are relatively consistent from bust to bust. He has these really large eyes, and I don't feel like I really captured that well. So this is definitely a reconstruction I'm going to revisit. But on the child bust, or this bust here, where you can clearly, I mean, to me, he's probably about 12 in this bust over here, quite young. He's got really big eyes in this one, really big and parted eyes in this one. And my attempts to reproduce it didn't go well. It looked really buggy. So occasionally when I'm faced with that kind of, I'm not going to say lack of realism, but with that kind of extreme kind of look in terms of the phenotype of the person I'm reconstructing, I will look at the other statues and see if I can find a middle ground. And if I still can't find it there, then I have to do a little bit of aggregation to get it to a place where it looks realistic. So I didn't quite get there, if I'm going to be totally honest, with my Amos. So I've got a bit of work to do. I feel like I definitely will revisit it. I feel like I definitely will revisit the Amos the first and see if I can get it a bit closer. David says, no, it's good. I'm not sure if you're talking about my Amos the third. I feel like I need to do a bit more work. I will get there. Early 2025, I feel like you'll see an updated Amos. The hair I'm really happy with. I think I just need the hair from an Afar. There's a picture of an Afar man on the internet, which I just basically stole, and I just added a few layers to just kind of make it match this. So that's the beautiful thing, is that when it comes to stuff like the hairstyles, because of African cultural continuity, this is something that we can do that the Eurocentrists can't do. We can borrow from living African populations who are still continuing the culture of the ancient Egyptians. I do it all the time. I do it for outfits. I do it for hairstyles. I do it all the time, because the ancient Egyptian culture, which many people believe is dead, is very much alive and kicking. Okay, it's very, very much alive and kicking. So it's very easy to find, people who I can borrow from. So yeah, I'll keep working to get that one a bit better. This was quite nice to do, even though, like I said, I'm going to work on my Amos the first and get it a bit better. It was nice to put Amos next to Amos Nefertari. That was a nice touch, even though I'm told that, is this her son up here? I'm not sure if I got this right. I need to revisit this stele. I haven't got a chance to look at it right now, but this could be a picture of Amos Nefertari with her son, who is it Amenhotep the first? I have to double check. I think her son's Amenhotep. So I'm not sure if this is her with her son or this is her with her husband. Maybe someone could double check that for me in this case. But there is, but it was nice either which way to put Amos with her husband Amos Amos Nefertari with her husband Amos. I would like to do that, because if you're subscribed to my YouTube, one of my latest shorts, I think it's my second to latest short, I've done an updated Amos Nefertari, which still looks like this one, but I think it's been improved to sit a little bit more in the middle of all of her representations. So I feel like I've improved it slightly. So there she is around all of her busts. I do love this reconstruction, but like I said, I have improved it now, and we'll see when we get to the kind of towards the end of the stream. Yeah, so that's actually one of my favorites, Amos Nefertari. It was really fun doing that recreation. So there's Amos again. Just looking to see. Okay, yeah, we can keep it moving now. Then these are my... Then we enter the world of my never-ending adaptations and updates to Tutankhamun. And those of you who've been subscribed here long enough will know that I never stop updating him. Although I will say, I feel like towards the middle of this year, I've created a version of Tutankhamun that I'm really settled with, actually. If I'm going to be totally honest with you, I'm really settled with where I am. It's not this one. We'll get there eventually. But I'm very settled with where I am right now with my Tutankhamun. I'm kind of like, nah, I like it. I like it. I think it feels right to me. It feels like it kind of ticks all of the boxes in terms of his different representations and how his features present themselves. But these were close either which way. Interesting side note, this reconstruction over here was an aged down version of an older Tutankhamun that I'd done based on his statue at the Louvre Museum. So I think we'll come across that soon. But I took that reconstruction, I aged it down, and it matched his mannequin really well, almost exactly. And once again, that's just me proving to myself that the reconstructions are very consistent with one another. They sit really, you know, if you try your best to honor what you see in the artwork, you'll find that it carries from youth to old age. I did that a lot with my Amenemhat III. My Amenemhat III, which we might come on to today, I did one reconstruction of Amenemhat III, and I was able to basically modify it very, very, very slightly, and it matched all of his depictions. And it's the same with my Amenhotep III as well. One reconstruction, I was able to just basically make minor adjustments to, and it consolidated all of his artwork. So that's nice when you're able to do that. Let me, so yeah, there it is. This is the statue at the Louvre that I based that. So I created this reconstruction, and then I aged it down to create this reconstruction. And then that reconstruction just happened to look a lot like his mannequin, which I think is really cool. So there's his mannequin. And I think you can see that there's a lot of confluence between those two depictions, considering it's just an aged down version of an older version. That's just AI doing a little bit of clever trickery in terms of his age. So I thought that was quite cool. But that is not where we ended up. Let's see where we end up with Tutankhamun, because I've done a bit of work there. Well, I guess this is round one. That's some different hairstyles, or at least, yeah, lack of hair. I had him bald here, and the shape of his head here is based on his skull. So I think this was a nice, accurate depiction of a bald Tutankhamun based on what we have in terms of his, you know, in terms of what we have of him, basically. And then this is Tutankhamun, the reconstruction that I've created alongside various depictions of Tutankhamun. And those of you who know me I harp on about the fact that he's very consistently depicted. And hopefully you can see from these reconstructions that that consistent depiction goes across, you know, most, if not all, of his artworks, which is quite nice. And then this is just a nice little overlay to my reconstruction and his cadaver, which isn't the nicest thing to do, but it's still quite important work to do. And you can see this, the expression of those of you who know his very African teeth, okay, which didn't need to poke through his reconstruction to know that they existed beneath, because that's just a very, I'm going to say, East African trait. That's a very East African trait, his teeth. If you want to know more about that, check out my documentary about Was Tutankhamun Black? I think that's like one of the last videos I posted, probably like one of the last 5 videos I've posted. Please check it out, because it covers that topic in a good amount of detail. So there's the age down reconstruction again against the mannequin, which I think was quite nice. Obviously, now this is one of the things that I spoke about earlier. I haven't manually manipulated this one, but if I was to, I would have puffed up the cheeks a little bit. And once again, this is one of the, if you're here at the start of the live stream, I mentioned the fact that Nydia's reconstructions have had a really positive effect on my approach, because those little tiny little details that I sometimes used to kind of skip over in the effort to just match the nose and match the lips, those little details that I used to skip over, I'm now much more aware of. And you'll see that with my final version of Tutankhamun. When you get there, you'll see that I've done a much better job at matching all of that kind of like face fat, which is really important to communicating what he actually looks like. So this is, oh, and by the way, this one over here next to it, this is an older reconstruction, but probably nailed the face fat a little bit more. So yeah, a bit of work kind of back and forth with my Tutankhamun, but you'll see that I'll get there in the end, or at least I feel like I've got there in the end. This is another post that I posted. This is just another contour continuity one, showing the continuity of this V-shaped scarf. Okay, which is still, remember I was speaking earlier about the fact that the stuff that they did in ancient Kemet is still at play in different regions of Africa. Ethiopia, in this case here, you can see the V-shaped scarf. This hairstyle, okay, tell me where else that is represented. Okay, this forward going cane row. That's a beautiful style, by the way. It's an absolutely beautiful style, but look at that, like for like depiction of that hairstyle. Yeah. And someone just mentioned, it's important to know that V-shaped scarf is also present in South Africa. Most things are present. It's, what's really interesting, there is always this kind of like South Africa, Great Lakes, Ethiopia, there's always this kind of like trilateral representation of Kemetic culture in those 3 places, and I absolutely love it. I absolutely love it. I kind of pick and choose where I'm going to get my inspiration from when I'm creating things. But there's such strong continuity, particularly in those 3 regions, that I love that it becomes really, really easy to do my work, because yeah, the culture still lives, like I said. So yeah, here I mentioned that. So in Goonie here, we can see the neck bead at play, but not just the neck bead. This is a young Nelson Mandela, by the way. And the shawl kind of it's displayed in exactly the same way. You have the neck bead with the shawl over a single shoulder. That's what you call cultural continuity. Okay, that's not coincidence. Okay, that's a culture that has been carried over for a number of years. And then we have the cowhide shields as well, still practiced amongst the Nguni people. Okay, this is Zulu in this case, also in this case, but it's just that continuity of that culture. Lovely to see. Now, Age of Fakes. I can't remember if I did this post before or after the after my interview with Professor Ampim. I'm not sure how many people here tuned into those 2 interviews. If you missed those, by the way, live streams, you need to go back and watch both of those. Okay, so if you missed those 2 live streams of Professor Ampim, you do need to go back and watch them. They were incredibly informative. So this is a bit of a summary of some of the fakes. I'm not sure if this is before or after, but some of the things pointed out, these are fakes. Okay, all 4 of these, all 4 of these representations, I believe, are highly tampered or entirely fake. Okay, without spending too much time on either of them, because you guys can probably read, you have Rahotep, you have the face placement of the hieroglyphics above the shoulders, which is not a Kemetic protocol. He has an unconventional pose, i.e. his hand is on a fist on his lap, but he's not a pharaoh, so he's not holding anything in his hand, a staff or flail. It's just in a fist, and that is just unheard of. If a Kemetic noble had their hand, it would be flat on their lap, unless they were a pharaoh and they were holding a staff or flail. Their hand would be flat against their lap. So this is just a complete break of the Kemetic traditions. Professor Ampim talked about the freaky deaky nature of the fakers, who gave her very pointed and notable nipples on this fake reconstruction of Queen of Nofret, Princess Nofret, along with this European diadem, which was created in Cyprus about 2,000 years later. And I've shown people that as well, because I've seen where they got the inspiration for this. It's a Cypriot. Yeah, it comes from the Cyprus area. Around 600 BC, they started using this diadem. No representation of this diadem in ancient Kemet. There's no in situ photograph or report, i.e. they've just plucked these out of thin air. Wrong ethnotrichological hairstyle. I've added that because Prince Ranapha should not have been depicted. Sorry, Prince Rahotep should not have been depicted with this hairstyle. Unconventional inlays in the eyes, noted by Professor Ampim. And I mean, we could go on. You guys can see this. I'm not going to actually go through all of these. You can read this and probably pause it and read it back later. But yeah, the old leak and paint, Jonathan Waters has pointed out as well. There's just so much crap going on. This head was not even on this. When they found this statue, it had no head, or they had knocked the head off because it was too African. I don't know which one, but it was headless either which way. And this head looks like they pulled out of the faked reserve heads pool. You know, it's funny. This is just something that I just thought about. Here's a question. Why are they called the reserve heads? Sounds like a conspiracy theory, but seriously, why are they called the reserve heads? Yeah. By the way, I'm going to go on record here and cast my hat into the center and tell you right now that I believe the reserve heads are a total fabrication. I don't believe the reserve heads are real. Okay, I don't believe the reserve heads are real. They have no support in Kemetic literature. They have no contemporaneous reason for existing. Every piece of artwork you see in ancient Kemet has some kind of reason for existing. It has some kind of documented support. There's something to kind of like say, well, we do this style of work for this. So you Shabtis, we know what the purpose of those are. We know what the purpose of the Sphinxes are. We know what the purpose of every style of ancient Kemetic artwork. The reserve heads have got no record. They just popped up in the 4th dynasty and disappeared as soon as they popped up in the Giza region. Yeah, in the Giza region, for some reason, these reserve heads pop up and they have no identification of who they are, and they have no purpose for their existing. They're literally just heads cut off by the neck. They are ludicrous, and Egyptology can accept them as much as they want, but Egyptology historically has accepted a lot of fakes. Egyptology still accepts Rahotep and Nofret as genuine artifacts. So why would I even give the reserve heads any kind of time? And yes, the fact that you've just literally hit the nail on the head. Okay, they would have their heads changed based on their moods. Yeah, exactly. So that's probably why they're called the reserve heads. It's probably literally a name given by the Egyptologists, or say Egyptologists, by the Germans who created them, to say, okay, well, we've got these heads here that we've created. We've got our artists to create. And by the way, if you haven't seen the reserve heads, Google them to give yourself a good laugh about something that doesn't look Egyptian at all. There's no Kemetic continuity. It looked like nothing else produced in ancient Kemet, apart from this head that they plunked on top of this statue. The only thing that looks like the reserve heads is this statue. Nothing else in 3,000 years of ancient Egyptian history looks anything like them. So yes, I don't believe they are. I don't believe they're genuine. I think they're a fraud, and a bad fraud at that. Let me give a big thank you and a shout out to Black Rampage. Thank you very much, brother. He said, you set 2024 on fire. Keep the inferno blazing. I will try my level best. And I appreciate you because you provided a lot of support. You're always here in the live streams, and you're part of this very important community that keep me motivated, keep doing what I'm doing. So yes, thank you very much. I respect you and I appreciate your gift. Okay. Let's move on from that one. Africanity of Tutankhamun. This eventually found its way into being the documentary that you can see that I've posted now, that I'm actually yeah. So there you go. You can see anyway, I don't think that needs much explanation here. I did some different views of Tutankhamun based on profile views of his sentinel statue and his golden mask. Okay. And then made sure that that was consistent with the profile scan of his skull. Okay, so it's kind of a 2D forensic approach, just to show, for me, it was more about feature placement to make sure that I was being correct with that, and also to prove the fact that this is something they said is artistic and unrealistic. Yet, if I'm able to create a reconstruction, and then that reconstruction is consistent with the skull, at which point does the validity or the argument that the artworks are not valid have any weight? It doesn't have any strength at that point. And I think that's the only point that needs to be pressed, is that you can take his cadaver, you can overlay it with his artworks, and you can get an entirely consistent human being. So why on earth would you do it any other way? Okay, and that's just a show of different views there. Okay, I'm going to just kind of scroll through at this point. I think I've made the point in there. I think you know what point I was making here with this one. Okay, both of these reconstructions are consistent from a forensic perspective in terms of the features of the skull, but only one of them is consistent also with the artwork. They could have done that with this, but they chose not to. That's the issue. Let me just get rid of the comment so we can see. So yeah, they could have done that, but they chose not to. Schmiegel reconstruction. Okay, let's carry on. This was a nice little mock-up that I made, just using that same reconstruction, the side view that I showed you. I just kind of like added the hairstyle and the crown and showed him in his kind of full regalia. And I just thought it was nice to have this view for comparison against his depiction on the golden throne. I didn't dare do the Osirian crown. That was like a that was like a step too far for me. I have no idea, by the way, what that would have looked like in life. I would love some assistance. In fact, I've got a semi idea, because I was looking at this the other day and I actually thought, if you look at his golden crown, or the crowns, they have this kind of like wavy snake that kind of goes through the center, and something tells me that this may have clipped to that little wavy snake that sat in the center. So they have this little wavy snake that sat in the center of the crown, and something tells me that this Osirian crown might have clipped. So it might have been, we're seeing it from sideways. It might have been like almost like a pirate's hat from the front. It would be a lot of fun trying to recreate this, wherever it was, this Osirian crown. It definitely would be a lot of fun. One day. Let's see if we can do that. But yeah, I enjoyed creating this, and I do want to create more of these. So I was saying earlier actually about the when I make the canvases available, I would like all of my reconstructions to look something like this, i.e. full reconstructions that actually feel like portraits and artworks, kind of things that you would hang above a mantelpiece. So that's what I'm aiming to do. And when I get there, that's when you'll probably find that they'll be available for purchase, because I wouldn't want to give you guys any less than the very best if I was gonna make these available for sale. So that's why. So there's a bit of a close-up there. Okay, you can kind of see how I can see how someone looking like this would have been represented like this. I still feel like actually this just feels a little bit more, I don't know. I could have pushed the chin forward a little bit here. Could have, I don't know. We'll see. It has to be consistent. This is the thing. You have to get them consistent with everything. You can't just match one piece of artwork, because you've got a skull and several other pieces of artwork to consider, and that's the balancing act that you have to pay, I guess. This was kind of like my second attempt at Amenhotep. Still kind of early on in terms of the hairstyles, as you can see, but this was kind of a nice front and side view. And I think this is this around the time that I got into my spat with, yes, this would have been around the time I got into my spat with Cesare Marias regarding his reconstructions. And so I revisited my Amenhotep III reconstructions, and did a bit more of a forensic approach, making sure that they had a continuity with the remains, with the skull and the mummy of Amenhotep III, so that when I presented my paper, refuting to some degree, or challenging, I should say. I'm not going to use the word refuting. I think that word's overused. Challenging Mr. Marias's work, I wanted it to be quite robust. So I had to then revisit a lot of my reconstructions and make sure that they were, credible. Because that's I would have been exposing myself to a bit of a rollicking if I didn't do that. So that's why I did it that way. So yes, and this now goes back to the point that I raised earlier, when I talked about the fact that I did one reconstruction and then I did a series of minor adaptations, i.e. using AI to change the age, do a bit of photoshopping to change, increase or reduce the weight, just a bit of work kind of like on the various platforms that I use, to show that the same person can be used across all of Amenhotep III's artworks. And by the way, Amenhotep III is one of the most portrayed people in ancient Egyptian artwork. We got loads and loads and loads of artwork and busts of him. And the fact that you could take one reconstruction and apply them across all of his artworks, I think that kind of gives kudos to the fact that he must have looked like that. That then it becomes, in my view, in my perspective, it becomes very hard to argue against the fact that someone looks a certain way if I'm able to take the same face and make it match all of his portraits. In which case, I've either found Amenhotep or I found his body double. That's at least my perspective on that. So yeah, this is I love this statue, by the way. This is a statue of a young Amenhotep. I think this is my own picture, if I remember correctly. I think this is my own picture from my phone. So I showed here against the reconstruction, which I think are nice, really consistent with each other. Okay. I love this hairstyle representation. I don't know why. I know it's a little bit, some people will make the soul glow jokes, but I don't know. I just really like Amenhotep in this hairstyle because it just reminds me of those side views. And then this is Amenhotep bald, but consistent with his skull. So this is a forensic reconstruction. Yeah, so you can kind of see it's a bit of a peculiar head shape, I'm not gonna lie. I could maybe do a bit of work with that, we'll see. But yes, and this is when I found myself in debate with Cesare Moraes. This is his reconstruction of Amenhotep III, which you can imagine I was very much against. So his 3D approximation of the skull I couldn't use because I'd spoke about the fact that he moves the spine to the back of the head to reduce the rear protrusion and to hide the kind of the dolichocephalic nature of the skull. He also kind of moved the jaw or jutted the jaw inwards to make it look like he was retrognathic when in fact he was clearly prognathic, which I preserved. And also the front teeth, which were knocked off, he didn't rebuild. He just kind of like used that as an opportunity to flatten the front of his face. Whereas it's very likely the teeth that were knocked off at the front would have presented a degree of overjet and overbite, which was consistent with the 18th dynasty pharaohs. So all of that, when I made my approximation of the 2D skull, I fixed, whereas he kind of just used as an opportunity to Europeanize the appearance of the skull, which I found a little bit annoying. But yeah, that's just my take. There's a paper, by the way, if you haven't read it, I have done a paper on the called Reassessing the Reconstruction of Amenhotep III. It's available on academia.edu. I will drop a link at some point, or someone maybe from someone who's got a link to it, maybe we'll drop it in the chat, we'll see. So this is just a few different views. Once again, I tried my best to, like I said, make it forensic, showing you from various views. Okay. And it does take a lot of work to get the different views. It's not as easy as perhaps people will think, because a lot of time you're working with old photos and then you have to, I had to manually essentially tilt it down to get the front view, because initially the front view was kind of tilted upwards. So I had to get the side view and then do projections to be able to get the front view. Now I know that's all sound like gobbledygook to you guys, but can you see all the warping of these lines in the background, in and around here? That is just a little clue as to the kind of work that I had to do to get these front and side projections of the skull. So it wasn't the easiest thing in the world, I'll be honest with you. Okay, and then this is once again same reconstruction, aged up slightly and added a bit of weight, and you can see I'm able to get pretty much the exact same face as his wonderful colossal bust that you can find at the British Museum, which is right on my doorstep. So there's that. All right, let me see how far up we are. Man, we got a long way to go. I'm going to start moving faster. That's enough Amenhotep III. Do you want to know more about Amenhotep III? Read the paper. I'm going to skip through now because I just realized we got a lot to cover still. I thought this is going to be a much quicker digest. I didn't realize I had this much in the folder. My goodness, I do a lot of stuff. Once again, same Amenhotep III reconstruction, aged down. I'm looking at teen kind of years now, and I'm looking at these two busts. That this one's in the British Museum again. I can't remember. I think this one's in the Louvre. I want to say the Louvre. This one's in the Louvre. And once again, I felt like these two were taken roughly around the same time, but we're still able to get the same face, slightly slimmer, okay, as we are in our teen years. And it felt consistent with these two busts that were made of him here. The young one you guys have already seen. Okay. And even the side views, everything just feels like it kind of falls quite nicely in with what his face would have looked like. So that's kind of mine versus Mr. Moraes' reconstruction. Another bust. Amenhotep III, those very full lips, undeniable. Okay, you can't just. I mean, how do you just ignore those? How do you look at every single bust of Amenhotep III, which has these full and big lips? Sorry, I'm just scrolling back a bit. Every single bust of him has really full lips. And then how do you take that and then make a reconstruction that has literally no lips? And it's not even just that from the front, they have no lips. From the side, he has no lips. Like, that's the most lipless person I've ever seen in my life. Literally. He's got no lips. Like, you've deliberately made him as lipless as possible, and that's just so bizarre to me. It's one of the reasons me and Mr. Marias, by the way, we remain frenemies. We remain okay with each other. We still message each other. We're actually really cool. So there's definitely no hatred there, because I think he respects the fact that we've approached each other in an academic way about our debate. But I will never agree with his process. Well, I say process. I will never agree with his outcomes of the ancient Egyptians so far, apart from maybe a couple, you know. So there you go. And then there's just the different depictions of him at different ages: younger, middle, slightly older, and, you know, uncle looking Amenhotep. Okay, so let's move forward, because Amenhotep's got a few live streams covered by him. We've looked at the reconstruction of Ramesses. Okay, so there's a side by side. This is my newer one. There's an even better one than this, but this is kind of like where I started working towards in my Ramesses reconstruction. I actually quite liked where this one was heading. We nearly got there in the end. This is probably my favorite. I really feel like this is what, when I created this, I really felt like this is what Ramesses looked like. That's just my personal gut feel. Remember what I was telling you about the hair? This is where I felt his hair would have sat, somewhere in this texture. Okay, very common, kind of, you know, across the Nile. I just like to say Nile dwelling populations. This would be very normal and expected hair texture. I told you about the fact that his hair here, you notice, is not falling down towards the bed. It's just stiff. I have to say that and have to state that. Remember, this is resined hair that's been wrapped for millennia. Okay, that's why it's created this. But that would have been before the resin was coming through and before it was covered. I don't believe his hair would have been straight like this. I just don't. And I know, can I just say this very, very clearly? I know that Africans can have straight hair. Sometimes when I say this, people respond and they go, well, Africans can have straight hair. And I know that loads of Sudanese people, loads of Africans, indigenous, 100% indigenous Black Africans can have straight hair. I 100% agree. But I don't think that was the case with Ramesses. I don't believe that this is a picture of what his hair texture was. And I've communicated why this is the case. And I'm not going to change my mind on that. I think this is kind of where he sat. By the way, a few notes about Ramesses, actually, whilst we're here, because this is always quite interesting. So Ramesses' nose was definitely broken, by the way. I mentioned it as a possibility in a previous live stream, but since then, in reading the scanning of the pharaohs by Zahi Hawass, which is sitting on my desk, it mentions quite explicitly here that Ramesses did have transnatal craniotomy. So I mentioned it as a possibility when I wrote my paper, but since reading it in the book, I can confirm it that he had transnatal craniotomy, and what that was is when they broke the nose to extract the brain. So his nose was definitely broken. So this nose is not a depiction necessarily of what the bridge there, I would say, has been overemphasized. Also, his nose was packed, which they like to say, oh, you know, where they packed his nose because he was so proud of his hook nose. This is Eurocentric coping. And it's the most stupid thing I've ever heard. Carolyn Wilkerson mentioned that when she did her reconstruction. Oh, Ramesses was so proud of his hook nose that when he died, they made sure they packed it. It's like almost like when he was on his deathbed. Oh, when you mummify me, make sure you preserve my nose. my nose must be preserved for the, like, come on, that didn't happen. Okay, you're being absolutely stupid. The reason his nose was packed is because they conducted transnasal craniotomy, and if they had just left his nose, it would have just been completely flattened against his face. So in order to prevent that, they packed the nose so it would have held some kind of 3D shape. They weren't concerned with preserving his hook like these Eurocentric copers say. It's just stupid, you know. So people make a big deal out of Ramesses' nose, but Ramesses' face is very contorted. I will express some other things as well. Ramesses has an elongated alveolar. His teeth are actually here. You can see the imprint of them. Okay, this means his jaw over here drops as well. So he has a drop jaw. By the way, dropping of the features is something that's very common in ancient Egyptian mummies. Okay, dropping of the features. So the mummy is given sometimes a pulled look and a pulled expression. A lot of people don't realize that this mummy is actually a lot short. This skull is shorter than what's being presented by the soft tissue of the mummy. Okay, so like I said, his teeth, his jaw is actually over here. So the alveolar and the nose are actually being extended by the drop, which would suggest that he would have been perhaps stored in an upright position, which caused this kind of drooping effect of Ramesses' face. The problem is they don't ever give you scans of Ramesses' skull. All we get is pictures of Ramesses. They don't ever give us the actual CT scan of his actual skull underneath. So a lot of people just make a lot of claims or a lot of conclusions about Ramesses' appearance based on his very contorted mummy, and they're not aware of some of these things. So it's just kind of, it's good to kind of point these out. So there, this is getting close now to where I ended up with my Ramesses reconstruction. I was very happy with kind of this being a good likeness. I feel like I'm not done with Ramesses. If I drop a new updated version of his reconstruction, don't be surprised. I feel like there's still some way to go, but the old Ramesses I'm quite happy with. I do like my old Ramesses. It just feels right. The young one looks like it could do a little bit of work, but the old one feels good. I feel like this is a good representation, like I said. Okay. Yep, Ramesses, yep, we're done. Let's skip. Oh, this is probably something I haven't visited yet, but I plan on. This is more Eurocentric coping. I can't remember which skull this is. It's a famous one. I'm trying to remember which one it is. One of you might know. You'll probably say it in the chat. But I saw them create this, and I laughed my head off because I was like, this is so not what I'm seeing when I look at this skull. This is Europeans coping in a big way. They've ignored so many of the features of the skull here, but we'll touch that in the future. I will be coming back to that soon, guys. Tutankhamun, I mean, I could keep the slide here just so you guys can have a bit of a laugh at the Tutankhamun reconstructions over the years. This was a part of the paper that I produced when I said you guys talk about reconstruction being this kind of accurate science, but over the years we have multiple reconstructions. So I mean, we have who is this one again? This is, what's her name? God, I have a brain block. But this is one of the first ones done, and it looks like the person who made it. This is the Chris Corbett. This is the Elizabeth Darnes. This was a BBC reconstruction, I believe. This is Cesare Marias, and this was another one done by one of Hawass's team. So you have all of these different reconstructions of Tutankhamun, which all look equally weird and deformed, and none of them look alike. And it's just really just like, come on, how can you take the skull of an African boy, a skull that's so clearly African? And this is the thing I find very frustrating. King Tutankhamun's skull is just like so African, and then just make this wild mess out of it. it's just, yeah, it's just very, it can be very frustrating. I'm not going to lie. There you go. I'm not going to go into cephalic indices. We've done many live streams about King Tutankhamun's skull and how that's been manipulated. So we're not going to go into that because that's a long one. This reconstruction, I combined my Ramesses reconstruction with the hairstyle that he exhibits here. This is Ramesses the Great with his beautiful, natural African twisted hairstyle, which I thought I'd represent. It's not a depiction of Ramesses the Great that we see very often, so that's why I thought it would be nice to show it, because I think we only see the couple of the couple of statues where he's wearing a capreche, but it's nice to see him wear an African hairstyle. So that's why I did this reconstruction. I just kind of added this Afar version of this hairstyle, and I just thought it was a cool representation to show him in his, what I feel is his natural form. Ramesses, even my reconstruction, I'm going to say straight away, does give me really strong Afar kind of, yeah, Afar vibes. I'm not going to lie. Definitely. This was one of the better, although it could still be improved, but one of the better reconstructions done by Cesare Moraes. This was a reconstruction of Nazlet Qatar, which was the 35,000-year-old. Is it this one? Yeah, the 35,000-year-old Egyptian remains. This was based on, I think the features have been muted substantially. I mentioned that in the paper, that I feel like he kind of creates Brazilians as opposed to Africans, and that wasn't an insult. That was just kind of what I saw. He creates kind of like either white Brazilians or black Brazilians, which is what I kind of felt this kind of his work equates to. So another view, I provided this view of Ramesses statue, okay, looking very African, as I'm sure you'd agree, and Ramesses mummy, but then I want you to bear in mind, people, the argument was these aren't compatible, and my argument is they're entirely compatible, but we have to take into account some things. So remember, I was talking about the fact that Ramesses has this kind of like drop jaw here. His teeth are actually here, which actually falls quite nicely in line. His nose has been broken, translated to craniotomy. Okay, so when you take into account all of those things and then you recheck this, you actually realize, no, actually there could definitely be compatibility between this and this, but people don't understand what they're looking at when they're looking at the mummy is the issue. It's not a fact that there's something wrong with the statues, that they don't understand that they're looking at something that has contorted and distorted over time when they're looking at the mummy. And he was a 92-year-old man, not a child. You know, this is a very, very grown 92-year-old man. What 92-year-old man looks like their 22-year-old yearbook picture, you know? And this was this was Carolyn Wilkinson's approximation of Ramesses, which I just, yeah, I'm not going to go into this, but it's like, yeah, I feel like it's just all wrong. She actually states quite clearly on her paper that she wanted to encourage pride amongst the Egyptians in this reconstruction. That was one of the things that had been set out by the people who commissioned it, which were the Egyptian antiquities. So she knew she had to engender a sense of pride amongst the Egyptian population. What does that mean? Someone tell me in the chat, what does that mean when a reconstruction artist says, a part of my job is to engender a sense of pride amongst the Egyptian people in this reconstruction? Compare that to Ramesses' actual face over here. Yeah. There's the broken nose shown on Ramesses' nose, and then that's the packing shown as well. And you can see here Ramesses' open jaw, which doesn't show between his closed lips on this soft tissue. Okay, so there's a lot of issues with the way Ramesses presents himself. Yeah, I think RJ Mackenzie just said what I was wanting to say, which was, it's definitely not Black Egyptian pride. This image was just during my spat with Cesare Moraes, which I'm not going to go over right now. I'm going to skip forward now. This was me complaining about being suppressed, which is not fun at all. This is what all of my graphs and charts look like, by the way. I dropped the video. Yeah, this is what happens. I drop the video and it gets like kind of natural organic growth. And then it hits a point where it goes totally viral. And then YouTube's blacklist bots get alerted. It's King's monologue. And then I don't get any more views. And that's literally how all of my videos go. It's like they go, well, viral. I'm like looking at my phone or whatever it is, and I'm getting 1,000 views an hour or something like that. Like it's going crazy. And then I'm just waiting for the dead bots to come in and be like, nope, he's on our blacklist. And then literally it'll just hit a point and then I'll get nothing. Just done. No views. All my views will die. So this was me whinging about that. I'll get over it. I will eventually. I will get over it. Yeah, I'm not gonna talk about these. I feel like I'm talking about this too long. This is kind of my reconstruction arguments here. Skipping over some of those, skipping over some of these. I feel like I'm gonna jump ahead now because I'm kind of a bit bored. This is all to do with my paper about Amenhotep III. I want to get back to some reconstructions. So let's jump back in over. I'm going to jump back in over here. Oh, no, let me go before then. If this were my... All right, so this is Caffrey, but I'll need to go before. Oh, I've lost my back and forward. It's doing that thing again. Oh, maybe it doesn't like more than one window to be open. Maybe that's the reason. That's really stupid. All right. I hope you guys don't mind me skipping over the whole Amenhotep III debate thing and reconstruction, because the reason why is because I've done live streams for hours covering that topic and I don't want to cover it all over again. I don't want this live stream to be all about that, because I could talk about that all day, but it just won't be enjoyable for those who've sat through it already. So let me go from here. Boom. All right, so let me go from here. So this is me working with, where's it gone? What happened there? No, that's the wrong screen. What am I doing? Showed you my StreamYard screen. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. Okay, cool. So let me go from here. This is me working with Sahure, which was really, this was really interesting. So I worked a lot trying to get my Sahure reconstruction correct. This is a good example of what I was talking about earlier about me not getting face shape correct. So you can see here, I've got features almost right, but I've ignored how chubby his cheeks are. Can you see how chubby his cheeks are? And that really is a big part of his phenotypic expression. And sometimes I do have a tendency to lean towards the slimmer face, or at least I used to. And I think that had a negative effect on how realistic or how much of a match my reconstructions were. So remember I said earlier, I take this focus where I focus on the nose, I focus on the lips, focus on the eyes, and then the shape of the face. And I'm like, okay, cool, I've got it. But I'm ignoring the contours, the cheek. Can you see how full his cheeks are? You can see it from side view, even above his eyes. So those, I did capture a bit of that kind of eye puffiness, but maybe went a little bit too high. But these are the little things that I need to kind of like work on. And I think that's one of the things that I definitely see. Antebellum Black America said Sahure was fat, and I'm going to disagree with you there, because we can see Sahure's body, and they didn't mind showing their body. He just had a full face. Okay, it's a very African trait, by the way. Very, very African trait. Certain parts of Africa, by the way, to have a full face and be in shape. He just had a full round face, and I think me missing that out did undermine the accuracy. But he wasn't necessarily overweight. And you'll see that when we kind of get to the more accurate ones. So you can see these ones are still a bit too slim. I do like the way I've captured the features, but just not the full. So this is where I'm getting a bit closer. So you can see that fullness of face is a bit closer here. And I was a bit happier with that. Okay, that's more, it still wasn't, it's maybe a little bit too far, but it was closer. So I was happier with these reconstructions. You can see the fullness of the face that I've tried to capture there. So this is quite important for me to kind of like try and capture that. So you can see there, when you get the fullness of face, it does present you with something a bit more different. But that's what he was. But if you look at his body, this is what I was just saying to you earlier. He was in shape. He wasn't fat. He wasn't fat, and that's not unusual. Okay, for people to have like really full features like that, and even full cheeks and be in shape, not necessarily fat. It can happen. Or I would say it can happen. Happens quite commonly. And I think this is, by the way, to say this note, this is a trait of Old Kingdom Kemet. This is a trait of Old Kingdom Kemet. So Old Kingdom Kemet has I say Old Kingdom, specifically 4th dynasty. The 4th dynasty of Kemet has a very strong, has this trait very strong. All of them look alike. They've all got full faces. They've all got quite full features, and they're all in shape. They're just very full faced. So you see this, and you're going to see this in some of the further reconstructions I show. So you see it in Sahure, Khafre, Menkaure, Jedefre. You see it in a lot of them. So this is what you see. So it's nice to, or I should say, it's important to kind of capture that detail, because that's when you capture. See, that there looks like a much better split than the one I showed you earlier. I feel, you know, we've got the fullness of the face there, and that's definitely a better representation of Sahure. There, I think that's a better representation there as well. I like this view here. This is actually a kind of a still from I generated a video from an AI video, and sometimes they just give you really nice stills that you could pause on and get a good angle of the face. So I quite like that. So yeah, that's Sahure. I think I do revisit him again before the end of the year. This is Amenemhat III, one of my favorite reconstructions, because he's got, once again, he's quite well depicted and quite well supported historically. And you can see his features here. Let me tell you a story about this. Okay, so some of you will look at this and go, well, that's close, but it's not an exact match. Let me tell you the story about this reconstruction here. This reconstruction was not made from this. This reconstruction was made from, do you remember that one I showed you earlier that was based on his mold, his plaster cast mold, Amenemhat III, the one that looked like President Yaradua? That's where I started. I took that, I ran it through an age AI thing to make him young. The AI age thing spat this out, and it just happened to look exactly like a young statue of Amenemhat III. That's when I was like, boy, tell me something. Tell me something. How? Because that is close enough to say, I could turn around and say, well, this is a reconstruction of that, and most of you would believe me and say, oh yeah, that's a reconstruction of it. But it wasn't. This is just an aged down reconstruction of what I showed you earlier. Everything from the nose and everything. So then you get a good idea of how, you know, I did this image, which I thought was a cool. I don't know if you guys remember the post that I posted, but I said he's got the kind of face of that kid who lets off the fire alarm at school. Amenemhat III, bad breed. Oh, I don't know what it is. To me personally, yeah, he looked bad breed to me. I want them face the use, I'm telling you. Sorry, this is me stupid. So yeah, this is what I started with. So you can see it there. So this is what I started with, aged this downwards, and then it spat that out at the other end, which looked exactly like a young statue of Amenemhat III. And the thing is, if you saw that old statue and the young statue, Egyptologists will go and say, oh, well, they look nothing alike. This is just, iconoclasm. Amenemhat I just put his name on a statue that didn't belong to him, blah, 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 blah. All the usual crap that they say. In reality, you can see it's the same person. To me, that proves it's the same person. This is just a younger version of this same person. Okay, if AI could figure that out by looking at the old one, making it younger, and then the young one looks exactly like a young statue of Amenemhat, there it is. This is the statue that all of my Amenemhat reconstruction started with. This statue here. The nose I got from another statue, but I was able to get all of the details, all those contours on his face. And you can see this is actually what's really key. Let me give you something now. So this is where I'm going to take you to my nerdy world. I want you to just look at some of the key features that he's got. So look at the bagginess around his eye here. Can you see that? I tried my best to kind of capture that in the reconstruction. Okay, look at the contours over here. Just see all those, and you see these features, yeah, these little bulges and stuff in his face. He keeps that in all of his statues, which is what was really amazing. So if I go back, can you see that's there? So you can see it's still there, that little bulginess, that little bagginess. And if you have a look, it's preserved. Look, it's there. Can you see it there? That little bulge, okay, on the outside of his face. This is the same person. And the amazing thing is the ancient Egyptian artist was so good at capturing that detail that the AI was able to approximate the same face. So to me, it's like, how can you turn around and say these are not good pieces of art when I'm able to do stuff like that? If you respect the level of detail in the art, it really does translate. It really does translate across. So I could never not laugh at. Anyway, let's move on. Now, here's a bit of an interesting post, because I made this post before I found out that they had replaced the nose on Khafre enthroned. And I made this post to essentially say, hey, look, Khafre enthroned is still an African. Although I always had slight misgivings about this statue because I thought it wasn't consistent with his other statues. If you look at his other statues here, yeah, look at his features, yeah, much more rounder, soft nose here. But I just didn't have any evidence to suggest there was anything wrong with Khafre enthroned. So I just rode with it and said, okay, cool, this is what he looked like. I still loved it. I thought it wasn't a really excellent statue. I still think it's an excellent statue. But then I found out, and I got the evidence, obviously, that I've posted, that the nose has been replaced. I didn't see it here because this is a blurry photo. So the comparison was valid, but I did find out later that the nose has been replaced, and I'll touch on that. So this is Amenemhat III again. So this is some of the noses that I probably would have borrowed from to get that nose that I eventually settled on, which then followed him into his older and younger reconstructions. I can't remember where I got that image from or why I posted it like that. So this is coming on to, this is now where this is the post I did on Khafre enthroned. So this is post I did on Khafre enthroned and talked about the fact that his nose had been replaced. So if you look closely, all right, I'm going to go to Egypt, by the way, probably early next year, and I'll get a nice close-up photo of this. But you can see that very, very fine crack, that is a replaced nose. And those of you who followed my live streams know that I'm probably one of the #1 nose replacement documenters on the internet at the moment. I've made quite a skill of spotting the replaced nose and sharing it with you guys. But this is definitely a replaced nose. There's a change of stone. Okay, there's definitely a change of stone, and people are like, oh, it's just the hairline crack, this, that, and no, it's a change of stone. Okay, you can see there's a change of tonality that is consistent with this line. It's a very good nose replacement. But one of the things that you guys, if you were on my last live stream about my visit to the Vatican, one of the things you guys would notice that they're pretty good at the nose replacements. Would you not agree? Yeah. And the thing is the kind of phenotypic impact that these nose replacements have, people do not realize. It completely changes the character of a face. Because if you've seen my reconstruction of Caffrey and how African this guy looks when his nose is correct, I mean, he still looks African here to a degree because they still weren't able to replace his prognathism and the protrusion of his jaw. But when he has his correct nose, he looks super African. And this is why they felt the need to de-Africanize it, to soften his Africanity by breaking his nose and changing it. This is why they do that stuff, you know. And I just showed these two as examples. If people think I'm making this stuff up, this is two statues also at the Louvre. Okay, this is Ptolemaic era statues where they've carefully cut the nose out and replaced it with these pointy European noses. Look at this. Look at this. Now, what's really interesting, actually, I'm going to mention this now that I've been to the Vatican and I shared that live stream, is what's really interesting is they've done this with Ptolemaic era statues. And now I know why. Now that I've been to the Vatican, I know why. Actually, to them, it's more important that I preserve this European illusion when it comes to anything that's linked with Greco-Roman. Just like earlier, we were looking at the Fayum cadavers, and someone asked me, "Hey, I thought the Fayum cadavers were Greco-Roman." I was like, "Yeah, they were." But then you're seeing the contents of them. You're seeing that little African baby in one. You're seeing those two African adults in the others. None of them matching those Eurasian portraits that have been put on them. And hopefully you're picking up on as to why the noses of these Ptolemies, these are Ptolemies, by the way, okay, the noses of these Ptolemies have been replaced. There's definitely an effort to preserve a certain perspective on the way we view Greco-Romans that's even more important to Egyptologists than distorting the view of Egypt. So there's a larger work at play here, I feel. And this to me is a great view, indisputable, if you have eyes, that this is a replaced nose. And by the way, the biggest evidence that he has a replaced nose is just the fact that the nose itself, you can see it here. Like I said, it's a very good replacement here, but you can see the fracture along here, it falls along there. That's just the tip that's been replaced. They're very good at doing that. It's a really good replacement, but the biggest argument against it is just the fact that it's very inconsistent with Caffrey's consistent depiction of his very soft nose, which carries throughout all. He's got this statue here, it's called CG 15. Okay, Caffrey enthroned. It's called CG 15. This statue here is called CG 41. And then where's CG 15? I mean, CG 14 is somewhere. Anyway, so he's got multiple depictions, and all of them show him with this soft nose. Caffrey had a soft nose. It was a soft round tip nose, and you can kind of see why they had to replace it when you have a look alongside. I mean, these were early reconstructions, by the way. This is not what I settled on. I was still working, getting the look right with these ones. This is getting a bit closer, but you get a good idea of why the kind of phenotypic impact a soft nose has on the face of Caffrey when you compound it with the fact he has a wide face, when you compound it with the fact he's very prognathous, by the way. Khafre is very, very prognathous. His jaw is very much forward from his nose, and he has very full mouth, which sometimes people think, oh, well, his lips don't look that full. His lips don't look. No, what you have to understand about Khafre's mouth, and this is something that I learned doing the Old Kingdom actually, is that his mouth is very wide. Okay, that expression that he's got. Most people's lips will look quite thick when they kind of pucker them or they narrow them. His nose in his depictions, so his mouth in his depictions, so let me just grab this one for instance, is very wide. If you have a mouth that wide that still has that much volume, you are dealing with very full and thick lips, which is why even when I copy that exact expression, okay, when they copy that exact expression with Khafre, you're still going to, his lips are still going to look thick. And that's because to preserve that width of your mouth and to have that level of fullness, you're dealing with some quite, you could even just try it in the mirror. Now, kind of widen your mouth to that degree that he has it wide here. Spread your mouth that much and you'll see how thin your lips go. If your lips still preserve that level of thickness when your mouth is that wide, I'm going to tell you right now, you have some very big lips. Okay. I'm going to tell you right now, if you can spread your mouth that wide and your lips are that thick, you have big lips. Okay. Khafre had big lips. There's no two ways about it. And I only realized that when I started doing these Old Kingdom reconstructions, because they all have that shared trait of having, you know, who had really big lips? Jadefri. But you'd look at a statue and go, he's got thin lips. But no, he has really big lips. It's just that his expression or his mouth is so wide, you don't realize until you create them that he's got big lips. So it's cool. It was fun doing these Old Kingdom reconstructions because they taught me quite a lot. You think you know everything there is to know, and no, there's so much more to learn. They taught me so much about African phenotypes. Like I said, once again, these wide, look how wide his face is and full his cheeks are. I was speaking about that earlier. Okay. And this is not a fat person. Okay. Here, this is CG 15. CG 15, CG 14 or 15, it's one or the other. I can't remember which one's which, but this is probably his most detailed statue. Ironically, this statue is amazing, probably more detailed than Khafre enthroned, but they only show you Khafre enthroned because they've replaced the nose. This statue over here is a beautiful statue and you'll never see it. It's just hidden from the public. I think it's in one of the Egyptian museums and they don't show it. No one knows where it is. It's complete, and this is probably one of the most detailed portraits of Khafre there is. You know, so this is a very full-faced man. Even here, I haven't quite captured it. I do get better with my Khafre reconstructions, but I was quite happy with where these ones were heading at this stage. This is what we're looking at. So can you see the protrusion of the lower jaw that I'm talking about there? Okay, so he's quite prognathous. You can see he's got very full lips, quite a spread mouth. There's no way else that I could approximate this face other than what you're seeing here. It had to be approximated this way, but it gets a bit better. This one is the younger one, slightly younger. You can see the features, the way they sit. Okay, so that was Khafre. I think we'll come on to some more Khafre in a little bit. We have, this is my Ramesses next to Cesaro Moraes' Ramesses, which he released straight after I included Ramesses in my paper. So I tend to have that effect on him. He'll kind of like do something that he's recently seen on my channel, or we've recently debated. Yeah, so what was the only thing that was good about this, and I say good, is that when I presented Ramesses, he said Ramesses statues and Ramesses mummy are not compatible at all. Then I proved to him in my paper that Ramesses mummy and Ramesses statue are entirely compatible. And then he changed his mind and he decided, actually, yeah, I can use the nose of Ramesses statues on this reconstruction because it actually is compatible. So I actually got him to change his approach, and that's not the first time I've done it, and I'm quite pleased about that. But other than that, it's an awful reconstruction, as you can imagine. But yeah, I kind of I did the side by sides to say I know that I've influenced his final outcomes here. That could be me being arrogant, but I think I definitely influenced his outcomes there. So I made some updates to my Akhenaten, and this is definitely a theme moving forward. What is that clicking? It's really annoying. Oh, that's not coming through. That's really annoying. So this is me working with my Akhenaten statue reconstruction. This is a long process. I'm not going to go through all of this. This is, by the way, actually, let me just give you a little bit of an overview. I think I mentioned before, I am doing a paper where I will be arguing that the cadaver, or the body of KV55 found in the King's Valley, which they've got some inclination, but they're not certain. I believe it is Akhenaten, and I believe it's Akhenaten based on the confluence of the skull with Akhenaten's existing artwork. In fact, I found that. So this is my kind of rebuilding of the skull, and I found that it overlays entirely consistently with Akhenaten's artwork. And yeah, it's that just basically leads me, and this is one side view, and this is what leads me to believe that KV55 and Akhenaten are the same person, or could be a relative, could be a brother, but they're really close, really close. So I think there's a lot of weight there. So that's been a paper that's been under production, but this is just showing you some views. So this is my reconstruction of Akhenaten. I've changed the eyes slightly since here, but then overlaid with the skull, and you can kind of see the consistency. Everything seems to fit really nicely. So yeah, that's kind of something that I think is going to be an interesting paper. So yeah, I've done so this one's a bit better. I'm not sure if you can see, but I've changed the eyelid there. It was actually someone on my Patreon, because I do these I do early releases of my reconstructions on my Patreon. So if you want to support me on Patreon, by the way, you are very welcome to. I would love the support. I do really appreciate, obviously, everyone, but anyone who supports me on Patreon, you are doing a great work for me, because it does allow me to spend a bit more time doing research and not have to not have to worry so much when I'm just taking some time to read and actually improve the level of my content. But yes, if you have a look at the this from front view, the eyelid, can you see I've got a more heavy eyelid here that matches on both sides now, so the eyelid matches. Whereas, let me just show you the screen before. Yeah, that's how it looked before. Well, in fact, there was one even worse than that. Yeah, there. So that's how it was originally, and it just didn't quite match. So someone on my Patreon gave me feedback and said, "Hey, look, it looks great, but you haven't quite got the eyelids right." So that was one of the things I improved, and it helped me to get that reconstruction a bit better. And then I did some playing around. So I added some some weight to it using AI tools again, to just make him a bit of AI, a bit of Photoshop, but just to make him look a bit bigger. And then I found when I, added weight to his face and changed the expression slightly, it fell quite nicely in line with this other depiction of Akhenaten. So we had that, once again, that consistency where I'm not having to change the reconstruction to get the different depictions of Akhenaten. So this kind of like chubbier, older Akhenaten with a bit of a belly, bit of a beer gut, is the same person, just a bit bigger, which happens, Sometimes people are really young and slim and good looking, and then they get a bit more burly as life goes on. It happens. It's totally acceptable, So this is side by side, just to show your slim Akhenaten newlywed and your Akhenaten 4 children down. 4 Armana princesses later, and a few too many good cooked meals, you know, looking a bit bigger, but still the same individual, you know. And then the profile view, I hadn't fixed the eyes on the profile view in this stage, but you could still do a nice comparison. This is a complete match, obviously, to the statue I showed you earlier. And you can see how consistent it is with his stele depictions, you know, entirely consistent. Yeah, judging by the statues, I would say Akhenaten doesn't look like he was that tall. Although Tutankhamun wasn't short. He was about, according to early measurements of him, I know Hawass has changed this downwards because he doesn't like using the Negroid equations, even though Negroid equations are perfect for calculating Tut's height. I think he came out at 1.69 centimeters, which is about, I think that's about average height today. So he wasn't that short, Tutankhamun. But I'm not sure what the height of Akhenaten was. I could probably find out, but I haven't got it in front of me at the moment. I haven't got that paper in front of me, at least. Yeah, so there you go. Various depictions of Akhenaten. This is a bit of a sneak peek because this is the stuff that's going to be included on my paper that I haven't yet. And I showed this. I wanted to show Akhenaten and Tutankhamun at roughly the same age, and see if it kind of contributed to the discussion about whether or not they were siblings, or because, you know, there's still a discussion about whether or not they were siblings or brothers. And I just thought it would be interesting to get them around the same age, side by side, and see, yeah, how. I mean, they look related to me, that's for sure. It didn't give me any clues about how they were related, though, if we're going to be totally honest. And I really enjoyed this depiction over here of Akhenaten wearing the cat, because you guys will know, if you've watched my Crowns documentary, that I believe that the cat crown is basically an African hair bonnet, which housed his very African hair inside it. So it was nice creating this depiction of the cat. I don't think I nailed it exactly, but it just gives you a rough idea of how I feel that this crown presented itself in real life. And obviously, yeah, you got in there with the big old afro, which would have, you know, been tucked nicely inside this cut crown. And you can see a side view of the cut here on the stele. Okay, only African hair really can do that. Yes, indeed, we were. Bonnets since antiquity, indeed, is the case. And a few more depictions. Now, actually, on that note, this depiction, which I've always liked, this, I believe that this is an entire fabric, because when they found this, there was no face. These lips don't look like original. I think these were created. This fragment here that was placed in here was created after the fact. So I'm not sure if I'm even going to use this bust anymore. I'm not sure how useful it is, in that it's been entirely destroyed. For those of you who don't know the story, this bust was found allegedly side by side, or at least they were side by side at the factory, or the workshop, I should say, of Thutmose, the artist, okay, who created the Nefertiti bust allegedly. Yeah, I say allegedly. We all know that's a fake. But the Nefertiti bust is supposed to be a pair to this one. Now, I believe that this one probably has some antiquity to it and some genuity, as does the Nefertiti bust. It's just that with the Nefertiti bust, they've just coated it in stucco and just created something new from it. Essentially, I think when they were both found, they were both probably corroded like this one was. You know, that's kind of what you expect after 3,000 years of something being just basically on display in a random workshop underground somewhere. But they decided with the Nefertiti bust that they were going to restore it, and it looks like they were halfway through restoring this one, and they didn't get there, which is why they just got the lips done. But no doubt, if the artists had been given the time by I think it was the French, the French royals who turned up, if they had been given the time, we'd probably not even just have a fake Nefertiti. We'd probably have a fake pair. We'd probably have a fake Akhenaten and the fake Nefertiti sitting next to it. But it looks like they just got through the Nefertiti one and then they passed that off. But it looks that you can see the process of adding stucco and plaster to this one had begun. Can you see it here? So I kind of feel like, yeah, I can't really take what this one too seriously now, given I know what I know about it. Beautiful fragment here. I've used this one to help me with Akhenaten's nose and his lips, getting the shape right. And this is kind of how I ended up with this one. This is the old one. I remember I was saying about the eyes. This is the old one where I didn't quite get the eyes right. And this is the latter one where I corrected the eyes and gave them a little bit more. I still feel like his eyes should protrude a little bit more. But yeah, there you go. And there's a nice side-by-side of Akhenaten's bust with the nose restored. So I put the nose from that fragment that I showed you earlier. I added that nose to this bust, so I got a complete view of Akhenaten's face. And then I allowed that to kind of inform my reconstruction there. You can just kind of see how they overlay, get from there to there. This reconstruction is actually done by, I can't remember the name of the guy who did it, but he created this Amenhotep III reconstruction from a completely different bust to mine. And I just found it interesting that we both approximated a very similar face, given we used completely different source material to make our approximations of Uncle Amenhotep over here. So I just found that quite interesting. I can't remember the name of the guy. Excuse me, because I'm very tired. It's getting very late here now. And then someone sent me to this on my Discord. This is some random Somali dude who happens to look exactly like my don't act like you don't do it. Oh my goodness me. Oh, the amount of LOLs. Oh man, I could just end it right there, couldn't I? All right, okay. Hey, look, guys, I'm not gonna lie. It reaches that point in summer where you've been going to the gym every day, and then you're on holiday, and then you're in front of the mirror, and you're like, "Hey, not bad." You take the selfie. Oh man, what you're not supposed to do is expose yourself on a live stream. Wow, that's embarrassing. Okay. Oh my god. Oh my gosh. Okay, need to try and find myself after that. That was wild. I don't even know what to do now. Oh my god. All right. Let's let's pick up over. We've seen enough tut. Oh man. Yeah, I think we're gonna wrap up there. I need to edit that out of the stream. Oh man, yeah. I think we're gonna wrap up there. It's midnight. It's late, and I just realized I'm only about halfway through anyway. So I'm going to filter my folder, cut the end of that stream off, and call it a day. No, it is late. On a serious note, it's 10 to 12, man. Oh man, that was mad. Wow. Wow. I'm getting mocked. Oh man. Oh Lord. Lord. What is that doing in my collage folder though? That's the interesting question. I feel like I've been set up there. My Android set me up. It's not gay. Why is it gay to take a picture of yourself? Oh, I look. I am. Oh, okay. I'm not going to go into it. David, leave me alone. Yeah. Oh gosh. Wow. Yeah, I know. Retrospect is. Thank you, Captain Hindsight Surfactant. I appreciate you. He's like, be prepared. And like, yes, I will in future. Oh wow. Okay. All right. Cool. Yeah, I am literally done. That's me. I am out. I am thoroughly out, guys. Thank you very much for joining me on this. Yeah, that took me out. I literally can't concentrate anymore. So that's just taking me out. Let's wrap this up. Yeah, I think it is. I think a Eurocentrist definitely has hacked my phone remotely and planted some stuff there to just incriminate my good name. So yeah, we'll leave it at that. On a real note, thank you guys very, very much. It's actually nice that we got this picture of this Rwandan in this beautiful dress. That'll be a flashback to our last live stream when we talked the visit to the Vatican and the fact that the Romans dressed like Africans do. And this is a beautiful depiction of it. So yeah, thank you very much, guys, for joining me. That was a lot of fun. And the abrupt end was even more surprising than anything. I really, really, really appreciate you guys. Surfactant said he's supporting my OnlyFans with a $5 donation. Oh, I have to take that. I have to take it. Cool. Enjoy it, guys. Enjoy it. This is all gonna be cut out, by the way. It's if you're here and you're at the live, there's 110 people whose memories I need to erase. But that will be getting cut. So I appreciate you guys. Oh man. Thank you guys. Charles says, thank you, King, for your great contributions this past year. Look forward to 2025. RJ, it's definitely getting cut out. Sorry. Yeah, we'll leave it at that. Thank you guys. I really, really appreciate it. I've had a fantastic time as always. Thank you for your input. We've had a really good chat going on there. Thank you those that bothered to make a contribution. Thank you, Patrina, for closing your eyes. I appreciate you very much for that as well. And yeah, I think we'll leave it at that. Have a fantastic evening and an even better 2025. We're going to continue doing what we do, guys. Yeah. And yeah, thanks, guys. All the best. Chat to you soon. Take care. Bye. Oh, man.